Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Tuesday, and all of our guests are brought to you by the title sponsor of this show, once again, Able Auctions, ableauctions.ca. We're joined now for the first time this Donnie and Dolly season by TSN Scouting Director, as always on a Tuesday, Craig Button. Craig, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
I am fantastic. I hope the same for both of you and your families, and that the summer has been good to you both.
Yes. And the summer for you, I overheard your conversation with Ryan and included a trip to Vancouver Island. Have I got that right?
Yeah, my daughter moved out to Victoria with her boyfriend. They're now engaged. And then we took a trip up to Tofino. Had never been to Tofino. We spent 3 days there. It was fantastic. So just wonderful, wonderful weather. And it was post-Labor Day. So it's not as busy. So it's really nice.
Yeah, it sure is. You been there, Tofino, Rick?
No, not yet. Not yet. It's on the list, Craig, of things to do.
You've only lived here 55 years. Hey, Craig.
Well, if you want recommendations, I got lots of them now.
Okay.
I've been there for 3 days. Yeah.
There you go. I got a great Tofino story that I'll share with you guys one day. Hey, you spent, and I hate to bring this up, Craig, but Craig, Ken Dryden has left us on the weekend at the age of 78. You spent much of your childhood in Montreal, right when the Habs were reeling off. This is in the 70s, reeling off, and I think I've got this right, Stanley Cup after Stanley Cup. What are your memories of the late, great number 29 in your Lucky Number program, Ken Dryden?
Yeah, Donnie, I'm really lucky. First of all, your childhood is about your team, and watching a successful team like the Canadians in the city you grew up in is fantastic, and it was wonderful. But then, you have this person and this player that's kind of arm's length, out of reach. I got to work for Bob Gainey, who was really dear friends with Ken Dryden. So I got to know Ken in a much different way. And then when Ken became the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs, again, got him to know him a little more. And then when I was a manager, we had lots of opportunity to spend time together and talk about league. Take that a little bit further. When he wrote Game Change, and a lot of it, at the center of a lot of it was Steve Monador, who we had signed in Calgary, and I knew very well. So it went to another level in terms of, talking to him about Steve. And from that point on, and it became a lot more personal. And I just pinched myself and consider myself so lucky about how these things dropped for me and over time. And Ken we know what a great goaltender he was. We know how well, how passionate he was about changes in the game and also about serving his country. And to me, being able to talk to him in a completely different way and ideas. I mean, how many times have we heard, you started off with a question with Ken and 45 minutes later, you were just finished and immersed in a conversation. That was Ken. I never found a time talking to him, spending time with him when it was ever anything that you were thinking about, I got to get out of this. Time just flew by. I got to tell you a funny story. Yes. Bob Gainey was the general manager in Dallas. And of course, Ken tried to get Bob to come to Toronto to be the general manager. Bob declined. It wasn't an easy decision for him. But we're going into Toronto, and Bob phones Ken and he says, we're coming in. Do you want to grab something to eat before the game? We'll come a little bit earlier. Ken says, yeah, sure. Come on up to my office. So we go up to his office, and it's, 4:00 in the afternoon, and Union Station is right there. We come out of his office, down around the corner. We stop at a hot dog stand in front of Union Station. I'm standing with Ken Dryden and Bob Gainey, and the people, we're having a hot dog. That was our meal. That's where we went and had a meal. And people are walking by gawking, and they're going, is that Ken Dryden? Is that Bob Gainey? And I think it speaks more to just like how down to earth they were, because I think that's as brilliant as they were as hockey players, as brilliant as they are as people, down to earth.
Let's go back to 1971 for a second, Craig. 6'4" goaltender. No one wore number 29. He had the weird Sherwood stick and the weird mask leaning on his stick. Just how unusual was he, and effective long term, but how unusual was he, and what were your first impressions of him as a goaltender?
Well, I think like everybody else, it was unusual. You had this tall goaltender. Goaltenders at that time were small. and they didn't have the kind of the statuesque presence that Ken did. But Ken was a great athlete. I mean, he wasn't just a tall goaltender that took up space. He was an excellent athlete. The quickness in his legs, the quickness in reading plays, and being able to shut down different scenarios were tremendous. And again, Al McNeil told me this when I was in Calgary, and it was wonderful to work with the late Al McNeil as well. Al told me, and he coached that Montreal Canadiens team after Claude Ruel had stepped down. And I asked him, I said, like, how did you decide to go with Ken Dryden? He goes, I'd like to tell you, Craig, that we knew Ken could do the job for us, but it was more about they had two goaltenders at that time. I believe Rogie Vachon was one and Phil Muir, and they just didn't feel that the confidence level in those two goaltenders to help them push through into the playoffs was enough. And that's why they went with Ken. Al said the rest is history. He goes, I'd like to take credit for it, but Ken delivered in a big way. Jean Beliveau's last season, and Ken Dryden as a rookie, not even a rookie yet, wins the Conn Smythe, wins the Rookie of the Year the next season. We'll never see that ever happen again.
All right, Craig, the Canucks, you know what they did in the offseason? They basically, landed Evander Kane. Basically, everyone else is coming back, essentially the same team that got 90 points last year. What's your gut saying about the Canucks this season? What are you expecting?
I'm expecting a rebound season for them. I mean, we all know, Canucks fans know that there was, and I don't use the word, there was a lot of drama around the Canucks last year. And there was some injuries that impeded their ability to compete at the highest level. And I would call it a trying season for the Vancouver Canucks. But I think it's one where they look back and, Brock Besser resigns there. Connor Garland resigns there. Elias Pettersson leaves and says, I'm coming back a different player. And by all indications, he's come back with, we know, I believe that he'd be motivated, but he's come in, and what you see is somebody that said, hey, I'm going to come back stronger, and he has. Adam Foote, I was reading some stuff with Quinn Hughes talking about Adam Foote and the influence he has. I think Adam's ready to be a head coach, and I think he's ready to take the reins of this team. He's passionate. But I see a team that's more, and let me be very clear, that's more than capable of being a playoff team. And, Demko, a healthy Demko, we saw what Lankinen could do for them last year. The organizational win with the Abbotsford Canucks helps an organization too, players coming in. So I see a rebound season for the Vancouver Canucks, and one where they can really kind of flex their talents in a greater way. And I think that we'll see them in the playoffs. I'm picking them to be in the playoffs, guys.
The next NHL draft, Craig, should have players from Medicine Hat and Victoria going 1 or 2. They're not going to. They're going to be announcing they're in the NCAA. Boy, the Dub lost a ton of talent. Just a ton, Craig. How does a league rebound from the quality of players that they lost?
Well, they're going to have to. And I think that a new, like a scenario where you have the NCAA, allowing CHL players to go is something that's everybody's going to have to deal with. Everybody's going to have to look to a different path forward. But let me present it to you this way, Rick. They never had Macklin Celebrini in the Western Hockey League. They never had Jonathan Toews. They never had Cale Makar.
Yep.
Now, those guys had to take a route to go to the NCAA, which they were committed to. They don't have to do that anymore. So I know we look at the players that departed, and Gavin McKenna departed, Keaton Bierhoff departed.
Yep.
But at the same time, what other opportunities are going to come for young players that may not have chosen the WHL to come into the WHL and play right now? I think that's a wonderful opportunity. I think that's an opportunity that the WHL has to sell. When you look at what the NCAA offers, it's very different than what the CHL and the Western Hockey League offers. Focus in on your strengths. The WHL has a lot of strengths. They have a lot of opportunity for players. And there's going to be some uncertainty over the next year or two. But once it all sorts out, I don't see the WHL suffering in a significant way. The league might become a little bit younger, and we might lose some of the 19-year-old players playing in the Western Hockey League. But all in all, what other players will become attractive to the WHL is now they can choose that level at a younger age and still go to the NCAA.
We know you liked Cameron Schmidt last year from the Vancouver Giants. Well, guess what? They got another kid, and he's right from here, Richmond. Ryan Lynch, 16-year-old defenseman. What a player. He could go top 10 in the NHL draft. What do you like about him, Craig?
Yeah, well, you top 10. I mean, again, I'm going to say this. Like, I mean, you watch the way that Ryan controls the game. I mean, Landon Dupont went into Everett last year, and he was a 50-year-old player
Yeah.
that became the youngest player ever to get 50 or more points as a defenseman in the Western Hockey League. Scott Niedermayer was a lot. Well, Ryan Lynn did the same thing. And, because Landon was an exceptional status player, Ryan kind of got lost a little bit. He shouldn't get lost. He's a brilliant player. I think a couple of things about Ryan that really stand out to me. I know how good he is offensively. His mind is great, precision passer, all the things you do offensively. At the U18 championship, he was instrumental in helping Canada win the U18. He was only 17 years old, and it was his defensive play. It was his penalty killing. I think he's an elite defenseman. And again, not just a one-trick pony. He can do it all, and he's shown himself he can do it all. I don't have any question that he's going to be an excellent player in the National Hockey League.
Okay, Craig, as we let you go, I'll just let you know that I've instructed Ryan Henderson to clip your prediction that the Canucks are going to make the playoffs. So that could come back to haunt you.
I'm not worried about haunting. Halloween will come soon enough. But, the thing about predictions, you can only be one of two things, right or wrong. I believe I'm going to be right on the Canucks.
Oh, well, you have a lot of support out here, as
boy.
always. Craig, great to have you back. I'm glad you enjoyed our province earlier this summer. Thanks again. We'll talk to you next week.
Always my pleasure, guys. Thanks.
You bet.